Why it sucks to be born as a giant hornet. When you first hear the words giant hornet, your brain probably fills with images of a monstrous insect, armored in orange and black, wings buzzing like helicopter blades, and a sting so painful that even hardened survivalists wince in terror. The name alone carries menace. These are the creatures that tabloids love to call murder hornets, the kind of insect that seems less like a product of nature and more like the villain in a late-night horror movie. If you're human, you shiver at the thought of them. If you're a honeybee, you probably pray not to meet one. But here's the ugly truth. Being a giant hornet is not the glorious life of dominance and terror you might imagine. Sure, from the outside, they look like apex predators of the insect world, armed with jaws sharp enough to decapitate bees in seconds and venom painful enough to hospitalize people. But from the inside, from the perspective of a hornet itself, life is less about power and more about endless misery. To be born as a giant hornet is not a blessing. It's a curse dressed up in an exoskeleton. The illusion of power. Most people assume that because giant hornets strike fear into humans and annihilate honeybee colonies, they must live charmed lives of dominance. After all, who would dare mess with a hornet that can slice through insects like butter and unleash a sting described as feeling like hot metal driving into your flesh? But here's the catch. Hornets don't get to enjoy that power. They don't strut around basking in fear and glory. They don't stand on the battlefield reveling in victory. Instead, they are slaves to a system far larger than themselves, the colony. Every hornet is born with a role, and that role leaves little room for freedom, comfort, or even survival. Being powerful in theory doesn't matter much when, in practice, your daily life is a treadmill of starvation, predators, exhausting labor, and the constant threat of death. The sting may terrify us, but for the hornet, it's a last-ditch defense against a world that seems determined to crush, poison, burn, or drown them at every turn. It's born into misery. Let's start at the very beginning, the hornet egg. Unlike mammals that emerge from the womb into warmth and care, a hornet's life begins in a dark, papery cell inside a nest built from chewed wood pulp and saliva. It sounds cozy until you realize what that nest actually represents, a tightly packed prison. The queen lays hundreds of eggs, each destined to become either a worker, a drone, or, in rare cases, a future queen. You don't get to choose. Your DNA and the timing of your birth seals your fate. If you're born a worker, congratulations. You've won a short, brutal life of endless labor with zero chance of reproducing. If you're born a drone, your life purpose is singular and humiliating. Mate once and then drop dead. And if you're lucky, or unlucky, enough to be born a queen, the weight of an entire colony's survival is dumped onto your fragile shoulders. There is no winning scenario here. From the very first moment, your existence is predetermined and none of the outcomes are pretty. A reputation that backfires. Now add to that the hornet's reputation. Humans have a long history of exterminating creatures they fear, and giant hornets sit high on that hit list. Farmers burn their nests. Pest control sprays them down with toxic chemicals. Villagers in parts of Asia will literally suit up in armor just to go to war with them. Even in countries where hornets aren't native, the mere rumor of their presence sparks panic. And here's the kicker. The hornet doesn't even want to bother humans most of the time. They're not prowling suburban backyards scheming about how to ruin barbecues. They're out there trying to feed the colony, hunting other insects because that's what evolution forced them to do. But because of their size, sting, and ferocity, humans see them as public enemy number one. That reputation paints a target on their back everywhere they go. Trakra's short life of fear. The average lifespan of a worker giant hornet? A couple of months if they're lucky, that's it. In that short window, they are expected to build nests, feed larvae, hunt constantly, and defend their colony against everything from rival hornets to angry humans with flamethrowers. There is no downtime. There is no vacation. There is no hornet retirement. You work until you die. Imagine if your entire human life was condensed into a few weeks, and every single day was filled with exhausting labor, constant danger, and a near guarantee that you'll die violently, either stung to death by bees, eaten by birds, crushed under a boot, or frozen to death when winter hits. That's the hornet's reality. The cruel joke of evolution. Evolution has armed the giant hornet with incredible tools: venom, mandibles, wings, armored bodies. But each one comes with a hidden downside. Their venom is agonizing to their enemies. Yes, but producing it costs the hornet precious energy, and using it recklessly can leave them vulnerable. Their wings carry them far, but they burn fuel quickly, forcing them into an endless cycle of hunting and eating. Their massive size means they can dominate smaller insects, but it also makes them highly visible to predators and vulnerable to human attacks. Every supposed advantage doubles as a curse. Evolution didn't give hornets a life of ease. It gave them a toolkit for survival in a brutal world, and that survival comes at an immense cost. Why this story matters. So why tell the story of why it sucks to be a giant hornet? Because it's easy to look at the natural world and assume that power equals happiness, or that being feared means living well. But the giant hornet is proof that reputation and reality rarely match. Behind the headlines and horror stories is an insect locked into a cycle of suffering, fighting, and dying, all to keep a colony alive for just one more season. If you think being feared makes life easier, think again. If you think being strong means you're free, try living as a hornet. By the end of this journey, you might never look at one the same way again. You might still fear them. You probably should. But you'll also understand why being born as a giant hornet is, in so many ways, a miserable hand dealt by nature. So buckle up. Over the next chapters, we'll peel back the layers of hornet life, from their miserable childhoods to their bloody battles with honeybees, their endless servitude to the queen, and the cruel fate that almost always ends in suffering. We'll expose why, despite their terrifying reputation, being a giant hornet is less about glory and more about grinding despair. Because in the end, when you strip away the myths, one thing becomes clear. It really truly sucks to be born as a giant hornet. 1. A nightmare. Childhood. When humans picture childhood, the images that come to mind are often warm and sweet. Playing in the sun, eating comforting meals, being cared for by parents. Even in the animal kingdom, many species enjoy some version of this. Baby mammals are nourished by their mothers. Young birds are fed diligently by both parents until they can fly. Even crocodiles, cold-blooded, armored reptiles, sometimes protect their hatchlings and carry them in their jaws to safety. But if you're unlucky enough to be born a giant hornet, childhood is not a time of warmth or comfort. It is a dark, claustrophobic, desperate race for survival. From the moment your egg hatches, life is misery wrapped in chitin. You're born into darkness. Every giant hornet begins as a single egg laid by the queen. The queen herself is not doing this out of affection. She is a machine of reproduction, churning out egg after egg, each one destined to become either a worker, a drone, or, if conditions are perfect, a new queen. When she deposits your egg into its hexagonal cell, that's the extent of her investment in you. From there, you're on your own, and your existence depends entirely on whether the workers decide you're worth feeding. The nursery you're born into is not a cozy cradle. It is a paper prison, crafted from chewed wood pulp and saliva. The walls are rough, the space is tiny, and you are packed in alongside dozens, sometimes hundreds, of siblings who are also screaming, metaphorically, for food and survival. The only light you'll know comes later, when you finally chew your way out. Until then, it's darkness, hunger, and waiting. A childhood of hunger. The first thing you feel as a larva isn't joy or curiosity or the warmth of a parent. It's hunger. A gnawing, endless, bottomless hunger. You are nothing but a squirming white grub with no wings, no legs, and no defenses. Your entire existence revolves around consuming whatever protein the workers manage to shove into your mouth. And that's where the misery begins. Workers are stretched thin. They're out hunting constantly, risking their lives against bees, mantises, spiders, and humans, all to bring back chunks of meat for you and your siblings. But there are so many of you, and only so much food to go around. If the workers come back empty-handed, you starve. There are no second chances. Unlike human children who can cry to get attention, hornet larvae have no way to bargain or plead. If food runs short, some larvae simply don't make it. Your cell becomes a tomb. And here's the cold reality. The colony doesn't care. Survival of the group matters more than the survival of you as an individual. If you die, your siblings will simply eat more. Sibling rivalry, Hornet edition competition among siblings is brutal. Imagine growing up in a family where food is scarce, and your siblings are also your rivals. If a larva gets more food, it grows faster, stronger, and more likely to survive to adulthood. If you fall behind, you become weak, slow, and more likely to be ignored, or even fed upon. Yes, cannibalism happens. Workers under stress may feed weaker larvae to the stronger ones. To them, it's just recycling protein. To you, it's a nightmare. Every hungry mouth around you isn't just a fellow sibling, but potentially a predator waiting for you to falter. Childhood in this world is survival of the greediest. There's the tyranny of the queen. Hovering above all of this misery is the queen. She is the mother of every larva in the nest, and yet she rules with absolute cold indifference. Her role is not to nurture, but to command. The colony exists for her genetic success, not for your personal well-being. In human terms, it would be like living in a society where every aspect of your childhood was dictated by a single authoritarian mother who sees you as nothing more than a tool. You're not her child, you're her investment. You'll either grow into a worker who serves her, a drone who briefly reproduces before dying, or, in rare cases, a replacement queen who carries on her legacy. But affection? Comfort? None of that exists in a hornet nursery. Growing pains. As you grow, your hunger only increases. You are a prisoner in your cell, helpless and blind, completely reliant on others to bring you food. Sometimes that food is raw insect meat. Other times, workers chew prey into a pulpy mash and regurgitate it into your mouth. Either way, there is no delicacy, no choice, no preference. You consume what you're given because if you don't, you die. And the cruel irony? As you gorge, your body grows larger, stretching your cell until you're pressed against its walls. The cell doesn't expand to make you comfortable. You expand until you can hardly move. It is claustrophobia on a biological scale, a slow suffocation in your own growing body. Childhood isn't a playground. It's a coffin that tightens as you live. To transformation, the pain of becoming. Eventually, your larval stage ends, but instead of relief, you enter yet another stage of torment, pupation. This is where your body begins its metamorphosis into a hornet, and it is as violent as it sounds. You spin a thin silk cap over your cell and seal yourself in, cutting yourself off from the outside world. And then your body dissolves, literally. Your larval tissues break down into a biological soup, and from that destruction, your adult body begins to form. Wings, legs, exoskeleton, eyes, all of it grows from the wreckage of your old self. Metamorphosis is a miracle of nature, but it's also a process of absolute destruction. Imagine being burned down to ash, only to rebuild yourself from the soot. That is your adolescence as a hornet. And while you're sealed in, you are utterly defenseless. If a predator invades the nest, if food runs out, if the workers abandon you, you die before ever seeing the outside world. Your childhood ends in silence, buried in a cell. The first breath of freedom, sort of. If you're lucky, if you've survived starvation, cannibalism, claustrophobia, and metamorphosis, one day you finally chew your way out of the cell. You emerge as a new adult hornet, blinking into the dim light of the nest. For a moment, you might think you're free. You might think your struggles are finally behind you. But you'd be wrong. Your childhood wasn't a stepping stone to happiness. It was boot camp for a war you never signed up for. The misery you endured was just training for the misery to come. Because now, as an adult hornet, you belong entirely to the colony. Your days of helpless hunger are replaced by endless labor. You've traded one prison for another, and this time there's no escape. Why childhood sucks so much? So let's take stock. As a giant hornet larva, your childhood consists of being born into a dark, cramped prison, competing with dozens of siblings for scraps of food, living under the tyranny of a queen who doesn't care if you live or die, enduring the constant risk of starvation, neglect, or cannibalism, metamorphosing in agony, your body liquefying into a vulnerable soup, emerging only to face a life of endless servitude. Does that sound like an idyllic childhood? Not even close. It's less playground and more horror film. And worst of all, there's no alternative. If you're born a giant hornet, this is the only childhood you get. You don't get to choose kindness or comfort. You don't get to ask for more food or better treatment. You are what the colony makes you, and the colony demands sacrifice. So much for childhood innocence. In the human world, children are shielded from the harshest realities of life, at least for a while. But in the hornet world, you are thrown into the fire from the moment you hatch. Your first lesson is hunger, your second is competition, and your third and final is that your life is not your own. It belongs to the colony. And just when you think things can't get worse, they do. Because now, as an adult, your misery only multiplies. From here on out, you're no longer just a helpless larva. You're a worker, a drone, or a queen. And every one of those paths leads to suffering. Welcome to adulthood, Hornet. Childhood was just the beginning of why it sucks to be born as you.
The
2.
endless cycle
The
of
Hunger
hornets.
Games.
Larvae needing
If you
protein.
thought childhood
Workers
as a
hunting to
giant
feed
hornet
them.
was bad,
Larvae growing
adulthood
into new
isn't any
workers.
kinder. From the moment you crawl out of your cell, stretch your new wings, and take your first trembling steps as a fully formed hornet, your stomach makes one thing painfully clear. You're starving. And the bad news? That hunger never really goes away. For a giant hornet, life is defined by food, finding it, killing for it, consuming it, and regurgitating it for others. The colony's engine runs on protein, and the job of every worker is to keep that engine burning. But the demand is endless, and the supply? Hard-fought, dangerous, and always at risk of running out. In short, your life has become the Hunger Games. And unlike the books, there are no heroes, only losers and corpses. A colony with a bottomless stomach. The first problem you encounter as an adult hornet is the colony's insatiable appetite. Remember those larvae you once were? They're still there, sealed in their paper cells, screaming silently for food. Hundreds of them. And they don't eat honey, pollen, or nectar. They need meat, pure protein, every single day. That means you, as a worker, are now a hunter. And you're not hunting soft fruit or leaves. You're hunting living prey. Caterpillars, grasshoppers, beetles, spiders, other wasps, honeybees. If it has a body and it moves, it's fair game. But hunting isn't a pastime, it's a desperate duty. If the larvae go unfed, they die and the colony collapses. And because the queen only lays so many eggs, every dead larva is an unrecoverable loss. So the colony pushes its workers to hunt constantly, as if the nest were a bottomless pit of hunger that could never be satisfied. The jaws of death. Fortunately or unfortunately, giant hornets are built for this job. Their mandibles are razor sharp, able to slice through insect exoskeletons like scissors through paper. They can decapitate a honeybee in seconds, chew it into paste, and fly back to the nest with a bloody hunk of protein. To us, that sounds terrifying. To a hornet, it's just Tuesday. But being an apex predator in the insect world comes with downsides. Hunting isn't risk-free. A grasshopper might kick hard enough to damage your wings. A mantis can strike first and slice you in half. A bee colony can swarm you and suffocate you with heat. Every hunt is a gamble, and every gamble is life or death. Imagine if every trip to the grocery store meant fighting armed guards who would gladly kill you to defend the produce aisle. That's hornet life. The grocery run is a battlefield. The honeybee massacre. The most infamous hunts involve honeybees. To the giant hornet, a hive of bees is like a treasure chest of protein. Thousands of defenseless larvae, all fattened on nectar and honey, packed together in wax cells. If the hornets can take the hive, it means weeks of food for the colony. But getting that food requires a massacre. When a squad of hornets attacks a honeybee hive, the battle is bloody. A single hornet can decapitate 40 bees in a minute. A dozen hornets can wipe out an entire colony of 30,000 bees in a few hours. The ground becomes littered with corpses, heads ripped from bodies, wings torn off. It's a slaughterhouse. And yet, even this terrifying advantage has a catch. Bees aren't defenseless. In parts of Asia, honeybees have evolved a countermeasure, the bee ball. When hornets invade, hundreds of bees swarm a single hornet, vibrating their bodies to generate heat. They literally cook the hornet alive, raising the temperature to lethal levels. The hornet dies screaming, if insects could scream, while the bees sacrifice their lives in the process. So every attack is a gamble. Win and your colony eats like kings. Lose and you become the main course. Cannibalism in the nest. Here's a grim detail most people don't know. Hornets aren't picky about where their protein comes from. If food is scarce, the colony may turn on itself. Weak larvae are sometimes sacrificed and fed to stronger ones. Dead workers become rations. Hunger is a tyrant, and when the pantry is bare, the colony eats whatever it can. That means your life as a worker is always one step away from becoming food yourself. If you're injured and can't hunt, you're expendable. If you're too slow, too weak, or simply unlucky, your body might be repurposed as protein for the next generation. There is no dignity, only recycling. Duck the endless cycle. Let's take a step back and see the cycle in full. 1. Larvae need protein. 2. Workers hunt to feed them. 3. Larvae grow into new workers. 4. Those workers must now hunt even more to feed the next generation. It's a treadmill with no end. Every new adult is both a blessing and a curse. More bodies to help hunt, but more mouths to feed. And because the queen keeps laying eggs as long as she can, the hunger never stops. The colony is a machine that devours its own workers' labor and spits out more hungry mouths to sustain. There is no break, no pause, no day off. For the hornet, hunger is both the beginning and end of life. Arcs no reward for the hunter. Here's the cruelest twist of all. The hunters don't even get to eat the meat they kill. When you, the worker, slice apart a caterpillar or decapitate a bee, you don't get to gorge on the flesh yourself. Instead, you chew it into a paste, swallow it, and regurgitate it back at the nest, feeding it to the larvae. Your own stomach stays empty. You survive mostly on nectar, which gives you just enough sugar energy to keep flying and hunting. But the real nourishment, the protein-rich meals, is reserved for the larvae. In other words, you're doing all the killing and none of the feasting. You're like a chef forced to prepare gourmet meals every day, only to watch someone else eat every bite. That's not just thankless, it's torture. Hunger as a weapon. The larvae, meanwhile, control the colony in a subtle way. They secrete a special fluid that the workers crave. This larval saliva is like an energy drink, packed with nutrients. When workers feed the larvae meat, the larvae give back drops of this secretion. The workers lap it up eagerly because it boosts their stamina and keeps them hunting. Think about that for a second. The larvae have basically enslaved the adults with a chemical bribe. You kill and sacrifice for them, and in return, they give you just enough juice to keep you alive. It's not love. It's not gratitude. It's biochemical manipulation. The colony runs on addiction. Trust hunger equals fear. In the end, hunger isn't just a physical state for a hornet. It's a constant fear. A fear of starving, a fear of failing, a fear of being consumed by the very colony you serve. Every flight out of the nest is a mission to stave off that fear for one more day. Every battle is a gamble against starvation. And no matter how much you succeed, the hunger always returns. It's not a hunger game you can win. It's a hunger game designed to grind you down until you collapse. Why the hunger never ends. The brutal irony is that hornets don't even live long enough to escape the cycle. Workers die within weeks or months, their bodies spent from endless hunting. Drones die after a single mating flight. Queens, the only ones who live longer, spend their entire existence pumping out eggs that guarantee the cycle never ends. Hunger creates hornets, drives hornets, and ultimately kills hornets. There's no retirement, no relief, no reward, just feeding until the day you die. So if childhood as a hornet was miserable, adulthood is no upgrade. You've gone from being a hungry larva begging for food to being an exhausted worker endlessly supplying it. And the hunger never lets up. It's the invisible whip cracking behind you every second of your life. This is the life of a giant hornet, not a life of glory, but a life of servitude to a hunger that never ends. And as bad as that sounds, hunger isn't even the worst part. Because in the next chapter, we'll look at the sting, the infamous weapon that made giant hornets notorious around the world. It might terrify humans, but for hornets, it's just another reason why life sucks.
Oh
3.
my God!
Pain is your brand. When humans talk about giant hornets,
Run! Get
one
out of
word
here!
always comes up. Sting. It's the feature that headlines fear-mongering articles, drives people to panic, and cements the hornet's place as one of nature's villains. The sting of a giant hornet is legendary. It's longer than that of most bees and wasps. It can pierce thick fabric, even some protective suits. And the venom it delivers is described by those unlucky enough to experience it as white-hot pain, like being stabbed with a red-hot nail. But here's the cruel joke. While the world sees this as the hornet's greatest weapon, the hornet itself suffers because of it. The sting is not a blessing. It's not a ticket to an easy life. In fact, being infamous for pain is one of the worst curses a creature can bear. For a giant hornet, pain is your brand, and it's a brand that gets you killed. The biology of misery. Let's start with the mechanics. A giant hornet stinger can be nearly 1/4 of an inch long enough to puncture deep into flesh. Unlike honeybees, hornets don't lose their stinger after using it. They can sting repeatedly, injecting venom over and over into their target. That venom isn't just painful. It's a cocktail of toxins. Some destroy tissue. Some trigger your nervous system to fire off agony signals. Some cause dangerous allergic reactions that can kill humans. One component even attracts other hornets, marking the victim as a target for the colony. On paper, this sounds like the ultimate weapon. In practice, it's a liability. Because once the sting enters the story, fear follows. And with fear comes extermination. Fear equals target. Humans are not a species that tolerates pain bringers. Creatures that sting, bite, or threaten us are often wiped out with prejudice. Scorpions, snakes, spiders, all face extermination campaigns in areas where people fear them. But hornets, with their giant size and agonizing sting, inspire a particularly brutal backlash. In villages in Japan, China, and other parts of Asia where giant hornets live, entire communities go to war against them. People burn nests, spray poison, flood burrows, and even use flamethrowers to eradicate colonies. In rural Japan, hornets kill dozens of people every year, making them one of the deadliest wild animals in the country. That fact alone is enough to keep humans hunting them relentlessly. So what does the sting get you? More enemies? More fear? More death? Your brand isn't protection. It's a target painted on your exoskeleton. Pain as a reputation. In the human world, branding matters. If a company is known for cruelty, pollution, or abuse, people turn on it. In the insect world, hornets are branded as pain itself. Ask someone about a honeybee, and they'll think of pollination, flowers, or honey. Ask them about a butterfly, and they'll picture beauty. Ask them about a giant hornet, and they'll shudder and say, the sting. That's all you are. Not a complex creature with a colony, a life cycle, or survival struggles. Just a weapon, a nightmare, a needle filled with agony. And reputations are hard to shake. Even in places where hornets aren't native, the fear follows them. The murder hornet headlines that spread through North America in 2020 are proof. People panicked at the idea of invasion, and extermination efforts began immediately. Entire species can be hunted to extinction on reputation alone. That's the cost of being branded as pain. is pain without purpose. The irony is that hornets don't even want to sting humans. Their venom isn't designed for us. It evolved to kill insects, to paralyze prey, and to defend nests from small predators. A hornet doesn't go out looking to jab hikers, gardeners, or farmers. Most stings happen because humans get too close to a nest, or try to swat one out of the air. But once the sting is used, the reputation spreads. People tell horror stories. News reports fan the flames. The myth grows bigger than the reality. And what do hornets gain from this? Nothing. There's no evolutionary advantage to being hated by humans. No survival boost in being branded a murder insect. The sting that nature gave them to survive has turned into the very reason humans seek to destroy them. To reproduce, the cost of carrying venom. There's another detail. Producing venom is expensive. It takes energy. A hornet has to constantly fuel its body with nectar and protein just to keep the venom glands full. Every sting is a drain on precious resources that could have gone to survival. And if you sting recklessly, you put yourself at risk. You draw attention to yourself. You empty your venom reserves. And worst of all, you often die anyway, because while your sting may drop one enemy, it rarely stops the swarm that follows. So while the world thinks the sting makes hornets unstoppable, the hornets themselves are locked into a weapon that is costly to carry and deadly to use. See, predators don't care about your pain. To make things worse, the sting isn't even enough to protect hornets from predators. Birds eat them. Mammals dig up nests and devour them. Frogs snap them out of the air. Even spiders trap them in webs. These predators either aren't affected by the venom or simply power through the sting to get the meal. A bird doesn't care if its tongue burns. It's still going to eat you. A bear isn't going to stop mid-nest raid because a few stingers pierce its fur. Your weapon doesn't scare nature, so the sting doesn't guarantee safety. It doesn't guarantee power. All it guarantees is pain for others, and indirectly for you. Is humans and the extermination reflex. The sting's reputation has also triggered an extermination reflex in humans that hornets can't escape. We don't negotiate with hornets. We don't give them space or respect. We destroy them on sight. A hornet buzzing near a child? Kill it. A hornet nest near a village? Burn it. A hornet sighted in a foreign country? Launch eradication programs. The sting, meant as a defense, has become a death sentence for the species. It makes hornets the enemy everywhere they go. To pain as identity. The saddest part is that for hornets, the sting isn't even their whole identity. They're builders. They're hunters. They're caretakers of larvae. They're part of complex ecosystems. But none of that matters to the outside world. Their whole existence is boiled down to one feature: pain. And when your entire species is defined by pain, the world will never see you as anything else. So let's sum it up. The sting is costly to produce, dangerous to use, and often ineffective against predators. It brands hornets as monsters, guaranteeing human persecution. It overshadows everything else about them, turning their entire existence into a horror story. Pain may be your brand as a giant hornet, but it's a brand that destroys you. It doesn't make your life easier. It makes it infinitely harder. And as miserable as that sounds, the sting is only part of the problem. Because what really defines a hornet's life isn't just pain, it's servitude. In the next chapter, we'll explore the tyranny of the colony, where every hornet is born into slavery, serving a queen who never lets them live for themselves. 4.
The queen
Slave
is a
to the
parasite,
queen.
and the
If there's
workers
one
are
truth about
disposable
being a
cogs
giant
in the
hornet,
machine.
it's this: you're not born free. From the moment you crawl out of your paper cell, stretching your fragile wings for the very first time, your life is already decided. You are not an individual. You are not your own master. You are property. The colony owns you. The queen commands you, and you will never escape. For hornets, there is no democracy, no negotiation, no choice. Life is an endless cycle of servitude to a monarch who doesn't know your name, doesn't care about your suffering, and will never thank you for your work. The queen exists, and you exist for her. That's it. The tyranny of the queen. Every colony begins with a single queen. She's the one who survived the winter while thousands of others froze, starved, or were eaten. When spring arrives, she crawls out of her hiding place, fat with stored energy, and begins the work of building the nest. At this stage, the queen does everything herself. She chews wood fibers into pulp to make the first paper cells. She lays the first eggs. She even feeds the first larvae. But don't mistake this for humility. She isn't working because she wants to. She's working because she has no slaves yet. The moment her first brood hatches, her days of labor end forever. From then on, the workers, the drones she produced, take over everything. The queen will never again forage for food, never again leave the nest, never again risk her life. She becomes what she always intended to be, a parasite living off the bodies of her children. And you're one of those children, one of those slaves, one more disposable cog in the machine. Born into chains. Imagine it. You crack open your larval cell, buzzing with the instinct to fly, only to discover that your life is already mapped out. You don't get to ask questions like, what do I want to do with my life? Where do I want to fly? Do I want to start a family? Number. The colony has already decided. If you're a worker, you will build, forage, and fight until you collapse. If you're a soldier, you will defend the queen with your life, even if it means dying in a hopeless battle. If you're a male drone, your sole purpose is to mate once and die immediately afterward. And if you're unlucky enough to be born a new queen in the fall, congratulations, you get to fly out, risk your life mating, then hide alone through a freezing winter where most of your sisters will perish anyway. There is no freedom, no self, no individuality, just destiny enforced by biology. The endless workload. Workers are the true slaves. Their lives are short, brutal, and filled with non-stop labor. Every day is the same routine. 1. Forage for food, hunt other insects, strip flesh from caterpillars, and chew it into paste for the larvae. Search for sugar sources like tree sap or fallen fruit to fuel your own body. 2. Build the nest. Collect wood fibers, chew them into pulp, and expand the paper fortress cell by cell. 3. Care for the larvae. Feed them endlessly because the queen never stops laying eggs and the demand for protein never ends. 4. Defend the colony. Stand guard against predators, rival hornets, and, worst of all, humans. There are no breaks, no weekends, no retirement. A worker lives just a few weeks before burning out completely, dying of exhaustion, or being eaten during a foraging mission. All that effort, all that suffering, just so the queen can keep churning out more slaves. Which are disposable soldiers. Some hornets are born with one job: fight and die. They're the soldiers, the muscle of the colony, the ones who rush out to attack when the nest is threatened. Humans often see this as terrifying. A swarm of hornets, fearless and relentless, diving at anything that dares approach. But look at it from the hornet's perspective. There's nothing glorious about it. Soldiers aren't heroes. They're cannon fodder. The queen doesn't care how many die in battle. 10, 100, 1,000. It doesn't matter. There are always more eggs, more larvae, more workers ready to be molded into weapons. Soldiers are born with death sentences stamped on their wings. The sting they're famous for? That isn't power. That's the leash around their neck. They don't choose when to sting. They sting because the colony demands it. Males, the cruelest joke. And then there are the males, the drones. If workers are slaves, drones are punchlines. A male hornet spends his whole life waiting for one moment, to mate with a queen. He doesn't build, doesn't forage, doesn't fight. He just lingers in the colony, useless, until the queen decides to produce new queens in the fall. Then finally he gets his chance. He flies out, finds a queen, mates with her in midair, and dies instantly. His entire life boils down to one act of reproduction, after which his body is discarded. No legacy, no freedom, just genetic material on wings. Queens are prisoners. To now you might be thinking, well, at least the queen has it good, right? Not exactly. Yes, the queen gets to live the longest. Yes, she doesn't have to work after the colony matures. But she's still a prisoner to her biology. Her entire existence is reproduction. Every day she lays eggs. Hundreds, sometimes thousands. She doesn't choose. She doesn't stop. She doesn't live. She reproduces until she dies. And when winter comes, only the new queen survive. The old queen, the monarch who ruled for months, who built an empire of slaves, dies cold and alone, her body abandoned in the ruins of the nest. Even royalty is disposable in the hornet world. No room for individuality. Humans like to imagine insects as mindless machines, but hornets are capable of learning. They can navigate complex environments, recognize nestmates, and even adapt to challenges. There's a spark of intelligence there, a spark that could, in another life, mean individuality. But in a colony, individuality is crushed. You're not allowed to be curious. You're not allowed to choose your path. You're a winged tool, locked into a role you never asked for. That's the tragedy of hornet life. Not stupidity, but wasted potential. The cycle of futility. Here's the cruelest part of all. Everything a colony builds, everything the slaves work for, is temporary. Come winter, the entire structure collapses. The workers die, the soldiers die, the drones die, even the queen dies. The nest is abandoned, left to rot in the cold. Only a handful of new queens survive, and they scatter to start the cycle over again. All that labor, all that suffering, all those lives thrown away. For what? A paper castle that crumbles in a single season, slavery without permanence, sacrifice without legacy. That's the reality of hornet society. So why does it suck to be born as a giant hornet? Because you never get to live for yourself. You're born a slave, you die a slave, and every moment in between belongs to someone else. Workers break their bodies for a queen who doesn't know their names. Soldiers die in battles they didn't choose. Drones exist only to mate once and perish. Even queens are prisoners of reproduction, destined to die when their purpose runs out. There is no freedom in a hornet's life. Only duty, only slavery, only death. And if you thought that was bad, just wait until we look at hornets' relationship with food. Because when it comes to eating, giant hornets face one of the ugliest, most brutal struggles in the insect world. 5. Hunger Games. If you thought slavery to the queen was bad, wait until you see what hornets eat and how much work goes into getting it. Because when you're a giant hornet, hunger isn't a passing feeling. Hunger is the whip that drives every waking moment of your life. Food isn't just a want. It's a relentless, gnawing demand. And it's not just your hunger you're dealing with. It's the hunger of thousands of larvae back at the nest, each one screaming in its own way for protein, protein, protein. Your entire colony is a bottomless stomach, and you are the delivery service, fueling the machine. A giant hornet colony is an eating machine. At its peak, a single nest can hold thousands of larvae. Each larva requires constant feeding, chewed-up insects, fresh protein paste, or the sweet secretion of other larvae. The workers, the slaves, become hunters, not for themselves, but for the endless mouths waiting at home. The larvae don't care that you're tired. They don't care that you've flown miles under the blistering sun. They don't care that you nearly got eaten by a bird while snatching a caterpillar. All they do is demand more, and you deliver. That's your purpose. Hunt, chew, feed. Repeat until you die. A carnivorous existence. Unlike honeybees that feast on nectar, hornets are carnivores. They crave flesh. They hunt other insects, stripping the world of caterpillars, grasshoppers, crickets, and, yes, even bees. This diet makes them efficient predators, but it also paints them as monsters in human eyes. People see a hornet tearing apart a honeybee and recoil. They call it savage, brutal, evil. But for the hornet, it's just survival. The colony needs meat, and meat must be taken. Still, the act of hunting isn't glamorous. It's risky, exhausting, and sometimes downright suicidal. A hornet can overpower a single insect easily, but colonies demand more than singles. They demand raids, and raids mean war. The honeybee massacres, nothing defines the hunger of a giant hornet colony, quite like its raids on honeybee hives. A small squad of hornets can decimate tens of thousands of bees in hours. Their massive mandibles snap bee bodies in half like brittle twigs. Wings and legs litter the ground in grotesque piles. But here's the thing. Hornets don't eat the bees themselves. They're not feasting on honey. They're not filling their own bellies. They're after one thing only: the soft, juicy bodies of bee larvae. Protein-rich baby food for the hornet queen's brood. So the massacre isn't even about survival for the raiding hornets. It's about slavery. They butcher an entire hive of honeybees just to bring the spoils home for their own larvae. All that carnage, all that bloodshed, and the raiders might not even get to taste a drop. Imagine being the executioner, the soldier, the butcher, and then being told you don't get to eat the meat. That's the life of a giant hornet, the cost of hunting. Hunting isn't without consequence. Every mission is dangerous. A miscalculation in timing, a strong defensive colony of bees, or a hungry bird waiting overhead, any of these can turn a foraging trip into a death sentence. Even successful hunts take their toll. Flying miles with shredded prey clutched in your jaws drains your energy. You may return to the nest only to collapse in exhaustion. And the very next day, you do it again. You don't get rest days when your entire society is addicted to larvae food. Sugar for the slaves. Here's another cruel twist. The workers themselves can't eat the prey they capture. Their guts aren't designed to process solid protein. Instead, they rely on a bizarre, almost humiliating system. When workers feed meat to the larvae secrete a sugary liquid in return. This larval spit becomes the workers' fuel. That's right, adults, the ones doing all the hunting, construction, and defense, survive on regurgitated larva juice. Think about how degrading that is. You're the one risking your life out there, tearing apart bees and caterpillars, dragging bloody chunks of meat back home. And how do you get repaid? With a droplet of sugary spit from the very mouths you're slaving to feed. You don't eat like a predator. You eat like a beggar at the feet of infants. The queen eats first. And of course, the queen always gets the best of everything. While the workers lick larval spit, the queen dines on fresh, chewed-up protein delivered straight to her chamber. She never hunts, never risks her life, never tastes the desperation of hunger gnawing at her belly. She eats, lays eggs, and eats again, while her army starves on sugar droplets. If hunger is a curse for the colony, it's the queen's luxury. Starvation is always lurking. Even with constant hunting, the colony often teeters on the edge of starvation. A week of bad weather, a poor hunting season, or interference from humans can collapse the whole system. Hungry larvae scream louder. Workers push themselves harder. And when food doesn't come, they start to turn on each other. Cannibalism isn't rare. Starving hornets will eat weaker larvae or even attack each other when protein runs out. Hunger strips away what little dignity they had left, leaving only desperation. So no matter how hard you work, how much you hunt, or how much you feed, hunger is never satisfied. It's a beast that only grows bigger. The futility of feast. Even when food is plentiful, it doesn't last. Remember, the colony dies every winter. All that frantic hunting, all those massacres, all those endless flights back and forth, carrying dead insects. It's all erased by the cold. The larvae you fed with such devotion, dead. The queen you slaved for, dead. The nest you helped build into a fortress, abandoned, collapsing into rot. Your hunger, your work, your suffering, it feeds a cycle that resets every year. No matter how much you sacrifice, it never builds to anything permanent. Just another temporary empire of hunger, destined to collapse. So why does it suck to be born as a giant hornet? Because you live your entire life enslaved to an appetite that is never full. You don't get to eat the prey you kill. You survive on the spit of larvae. You massacre other species not for yourself, but for the queen's brood. You hunt until you collapse, starve, or get eaten yourself. And no matter how much you feed the colony, it all vanishes with the frost. Hunger defines you. Hunger drives you. Hunger destroys you. And if hunger wasn't enough, giant hornets face another curse: loneliness. Because in the end, even inside a colony of thousands, a hornet is utterly alone. 6. Lonely skies. If you imagine a hornet colony, you might think of a buzzing community. Thousands of individuals working shoulder to shoulder, feeding each other, defending the queen, and hunting as a team. From the outside, it looks like unity, a brotherhood, a hive full of connection. But that's an illusion. The truth is, even in a nest packed with thousands of bodies, a giant hornet is utterly, hopelessly alone. Together, but not united, humans confuse proximity with connection. Just because you live in a crowded city doesn't mean you know your neighbors. Just because you work in a busy office doesn't mean you have friends. Hornets are the same. Yes, they exist in colonies. Yes, they operate as a swarm. But there is no affection, no compassion, no friendship. Each hornet is simply a cog in a machine, driven by instinct and biology. You don't share stories. You don't laugh. You don't comfort each other. You don't even have the capacity to care when another worker collapses mid-flight. You step over the body and keep moving because the larvae are still hungry and the queen still demands more. In a colony of thousands, no one would notice if you vanished. No bonds of family. You might think, well, at least hornets are family. Surely that means something. But in reality, family means nothing here. The queen may be your mother, but she doesn't know you exist. She has laid thousands of eggs and will lay thousands more. You are just one number in an endless production line. Your sisters, the other workers, don't see you as kin. They don't even recognize you as unique. If you die, they don't mourn. If you're wounded, they don't help. You're interchangeable, replaceable, disposable. The word family implies love, loyalty, and connection. For hornets, it only means biology. No mates, no love. If you're a worker, you'll never mate. Your reproductive system is suppressed by the queen's pheromones, chemically locking your body in servitude. You'll never know the sensation of choosing a partner, never pass on your genetics, never leave a legacy. If you're a male, your life is worse. You exist for one moment of mating in the autumn skies, and then you die instantly afterward. No bond, no relationship, no connection, just sex and death, all in the same breath. And if you're a queen, you mate once, store the sperm, and use it for the rest of your life. There's no partnership, no pair bond, no shared raising of offspring. Just a one-night stand with death at the end of it. Hornets are insects stripped of intimacy. The illusion of cooperation. To outsiders, a hornet raid looks like cooperation. A squad of hornets working together to destroy a beehive seems like teamwork. But it isn't. It's instinct. A chemical signal released into the air triggers the swarm. They descend not because they want to help each other, but because they can't resist the biological command. There's no strategy meeting, no rallying speech, no camaraderie, just programming. And once the raid is over, there's no celebration, no high fives, no shared joy in victory. The hornets simply pick up the bee carcasses, chew them into paste, and return home in silence. What looks like teamwork is just loneliness in unison. Death without witness. Perhaps the loneliest part of being a hornet is the way you die. If you collapse in a field, no one notices. No one carries you back. No one marks your passing. Your body is just another piece of debris on the forest floor. If you die defending the nest, your sacrifice is meaningless. The colony doesn't pause. The queen doesn't care. Your sisters don't remember. They step over your corpse and keep fighting. Even if you live long enough to reach the end of the season, your fate is the same as everyone else's. Death in obscurity. The nest is abandoned, the bodies pile up, and the survivors never look back. A hornet's death is as lonely as its life. The silence of the sky. Flying should feel like freedom. Wings beating, the air rushing past, the vast sky stretching in every direction. But for hornets, even the sky is empty. Every flight is a mission. To hunt, to forage, to patrol. You're never flying for yourself. Never wandering just to explore. Never gliding for the joy of it. You cross fields, rivers, forests, but you don't connect to them. You don't admire sunsets. You don't pause to enjoy the breeze. You're not free. You're a delivery drone with a stinger. And in those long stretches of flight, when it's just you and the endless expanse of sky, the loneliness sinks its claws into your tiny insect brain. You don't feel connection. You feel the emptiness of existing only as a tool. No songs, no stories. Humans bond through stories, songs, and culture. Even wolves and dolphins show forms of play, teaching, and social learning. But hornets? They have none of it. There's no communication beyond simple signals. No dances like bees. No playful chases like birds. No generational wisdom passed down. Nothing but the drone of wings and the chemical chains of pheromones. Without stories, without songs, without play, what you have left is silence. The silence of a species trapped in instinct. The silence of a life without meaning beyond survival. The psychological prison. Here's the cruelest irony. Hornets are intelligent enough to sense patterns, to navigate, to solve problems. But they're not intelligent enough to transcend their loneliness. They live in a prison where they can sense the bars but never break free. They're stuck in a halfway place, too smart to be blissfully ignorant, too limited to find meaning. That's a special kind of torment, to exist with just enough awareness to sense the emptiness around you. So why does it suck to be born as a giant hornet? Because even in a crowd, you're alone. Your colony isn't your family, it's your prison. Your sisters aren't your friends. They're strangers wearing the same uniform. Your queen isn't your mother, she's your master. And your death isn't remembered. It's erased by the next day's hunger. Hornets may swarm together, but in truth, they fly through life in crushing isolation. And if loneliness wasn't enough, nature has one last cruel twist for them: evolution itself. Because hornets may be powerful now, but their very adaptations are pushing them into dangerous territory, where survival might mean destruction. 7. Adapt or die. For millions of years, giant hornets thrived in forests, mountains, and rural landscapes. They hunted insects, raided hives, and built their paper fortresses in quiet corners of nature. The system wasn't perfect: hunger, slavery, loneliness, but it was stable. It worked. Then came humans. Cities spread, forests shrank, and landscapes transformed. Suddenly, hornets weren't just predators in peaceful woodlands. They were intruders in a human-dominated world. And like every species faced with change, they had two choices: adapt or die. But here's the tragedy. When giant hornets adapt, they often seal their own doom. Survival comes at the cost of even greater suffering. The forests are gone. The first problem hornets faced was simple: loss of habitat. Where there were once endless trees to nest in and fields of prey to hunt, there are now concrete jungles and industrial farms. Nests that used to be hidden high in tree hollows or tucked into mountain crevices now appear in barns, sheds, and attics. Hunting grounds that once buzzed with wild insects are reduced to tiny scraps of green surrounded by roads, pollution, and pesticides. For a hornet, the world has shrunk, and that shrinking world forces them into dangerous proximity with humans. Urban hornets, like rats and pigeons, hornets are learning to survive in human cities. They scavenge sugary drinks from trash cans. They raid orchards, farms, and backyard hives. They build nests under roofs and wall cavities, and even underground near houses. At first, this looks like success. The hornets are resilient. They're clever. They're adapting. But adaptation comes with consequences. Humans don't tolerate hornets moving into their space. A nest in the woods might be left alone, but a nest near a school, farm, or home, it's exterminated, poisoned, burned, or torn apart. The very act of adapting, of moving closer to humans, creates new enemies. Too efficient at killing hornets are also victims of their own hunting prowess. They're incredible predators: strong jaws, devastating stingers, coordinated swarms. Entire beehives fall before them. In evolutionary terms, this makes them elite. But in a human-shaped world, being too good at killing is a curse. When hornets wipe out honeybee colonies, they threaten agriculture. And humans don't shrug that off. They retaliate. Farmers, beekeepers, governments launch eradication campaigns. Entire regions mobilize against a handful of hornet sightings. Your strength becomes the reason the most powerful species on Earth wants you dead. The murder hornet curse. No creature can survive bad PR, and hornets are living proof. The moment humans branded them murder hornets, their fate was sealed. Headlines, documentaries, and viral videos turned them into public enemy number one. It doesn't matter that hornets rarely target humans unless provoked. It doesn't matter that they're just trying to feed their larvae. The brand sticks. The world sees them as monsters. And monsters don't get mercy. Adaptation equals overexposure. Most species adapt by becoming less visible. Camouflage, stealth, avoidance. But hornets adapt in the opposite direction. They become more visible, more aggressive, more infamous. Instead of blending into the background, they're invading bee farms. Instead of hiding in forests, they're nesting near humans. Instead of being rare, they're spreading to new countries, hitchhiking in cargo shipments. Every adaptation draws more attention. Every success puts them further in humanity's crosshairs. For a hornet, adaptation isn't survival. It's a countdown to extermination. The trap of globalization. Here's another cruel twist. Globalization carries hornets into places they don't belong. A few hitch a ride in shipping containers or wooden crates, and suddenly they're halfway across the world. At first it seems like an opportunity. New lands, new prey, new hives. But in reality, it's a trap. The moment humans detect them in foreign soil, extermination squads form. Scientists tag them, track them, and destroy them with precision. The hornets never get a chance to settle. Their adaptability becomes the reason humans target them even harder. No safe evolution. Evolution is supposed to reward adaptability, but for hornets, there's no winning move. Adapt to forests, forests are disappearing. Adapt to cities, humans destroy you on sight. Adapt to global travel, you become an invasive species, hunted across continents. Adapt to kill efficiently, you threaten bees and humans wipe you out. Every path leads to death. Evolution, the engine of life, has become a trap. Adaptation equals overexposure. Most species adapt by becoming less visible. Camouflage, stealth, avoidance. But hornets adapt in the opposite direction. They become more visible, more aggressive, more infamous. Instead of blending into the background, they're invading bee farms. Instead of hiding in forests, they're nesting near humans. Instead of being rare, they're spreading to new countries, hitchhiking in cargo shipments. Every adaptation draws more attention. Every success puts them further in humanity's crosshairs. For a hornet, adaptation isn't survival. It's a countdown to extermination. The trap of globalization. Here's another cruel twist. Globalization carries hornets into places they don't belong. A few hitch a ride in shipping containers or wooden crates, and suddenly they're halfway across the world. At first, it seems like an opportunity. New lands, new prey, new hives. But in reality, it's a trap. The moment humans detect them in foreign soil, extermination squads form. Scientists tag them, track them, and destroy them with precision. The hornets never get a chance to settle. Their adaptability becomes the reason humans target them even harder. No safe evolution is supposed to reward adaptability. But for hornets, there's no winning move. Adapt to forests, forests are disappearing. Adapt to cities, humans destroy you on sight. Adapt to global travel, you become an invasive species, hunted across continents. Adapt to kill efficiently, you threaten bees and humans wipe you out. Every path leads to death. Evolution, the engine of life, has become a trap. 8. Prey to the world. To most humans, giant hornets seem untouchable. They're big, armored, aggressive, and equipped with stingers that can make even the toughest person run. In popular imagination, they're portrayed as miniature monsters, apex predators of the insect world. But here's the cruel twist of reality. For all their ferocity, giant hornets are prey too. Nature doesn't hand out immunity cards. No matter how sharp your mandibles, No matter how venomous your sting, there's always something out there that wants to eat you, or at least destroy you. And when you're a giant hornet, the list of enemies is long. Birds, masters of the sky. If hornets are the terrors of the insect world, birds are the aerial assassins that bring them down. Many species of birds see hornets not as nightmares, but as protein-packed snacks. Bee-eaters. True to their name, bee-eaters are brightly colored birds that specialize in catching stinging insects mid-flight. With lightning-fast reflexes, they snatch hornets straight out of the air, bash them against a branch to disarm them, and swallow them whole. The stinger? No problem. Bee-eaters have evolved techniques to rub out venom sacs before eating. Kingbirds, shrikes, and flycatchers. These opportunistic hunters aren't picky. If a hornet flies too close, it's just another meal. Shrikes even have the brutal habit of impaling hornets on thorns or barbed wire, leaving them to die slowly before eating them later. For a hornet, every flight through open air is a gamble. You might be the terror of bees, but to a hungry bird, you're just another buzzing insect. Mammals raiding the nest. If birds are the sky-born assassins, mammals are the wrecking balls. To many forest dwellers, a hornet nest isn't a deadly fortress, it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. Bears. Yes, even bears. Despite their size, bears love insects. They'll rip open entire hornet nests, ignoring stings while devouring larvae and pupae by the hundreds. For the workers, it's hell. Everything they've built, every sibling they've raised, shredded in moments. Badgers, skunks, and raccoons. These mid-sized mammals dig into underground nests, clawing through paper walls to feast on the soft, helpless brood. Workers attack furiously, but thick fur and sheer persistence often let the mammals eat their fill anyway. Humans. Of course, the most dangerous mammal of all. Not only do humans destroy nests out of fear, but in some cultures, they deliberately harvest hornets. In parts of Japan, giant hornet larvae are considered a delicacy, fried, boiled, or even eaten raw. Imagine fighting your way through a brutal childhood, only to end up as a snack at a dinner table. Insects versus insects. Even among insects, giant hornets aren't safe. The insect world is ruthless, and predators come in many forms. Praying mantises. Silent, patient, and deadly, mantises wait motionless until a hornet comes too close. Then, with blinding speed, they seize the hornet in their spiked forelegs. Even a hornet's sting isn't fast enough to save it. The mantis chews through its neck while it's still alive. Assassin bugs. These ambush predators use piercing mouthparts to stab and inject enzymes into hornets, liquefying their insides. Workers returning to the nest may find themselves paralyzed and drained like juice boxes. Other hornets. Cannibalism isn't off the table. Giant hornets may kill rivals or even fight within their own colonies under stress. When food is scarce, hornets turn on hornets. No matter how intimidating you look in the insect world, you're always one mistake away from being eaten alive. The humiliation of bees. Perhaps the most ironic predator of all is the honeybee. On their own, a single bee is no match for a hornet. One-on-one, the hornet wins every time. But bees don't fight fair. They fight smart. In Japan, honeybees have evolved a defense called the bee ball. When a hornet scout enters the hive, dozens of bees swarm it, clinging tight. Then they vibrate their flight muscles, generating heat. Slowly, the temperature rises until the hornet literally cooks alive. The hornet, the monster that decimates hives, dies in the grip of creatures it normally slaughters. Outwitted, outmaneuvered, reduced to nothing by teamwork. For hornets, this isn't just a threat, it's humiliation. The very prey they rely on has evolved a way to turn predator into victim. Parasites, death from within. As if being eaten wasn't enough, hornets also suffer the slow torture of parasites. Tiny organisms invade their bodies, stealing resources and slowly killing them from the inside. Parasitic flies. Some species lay eggs inside hornets. When the larvae hatch, they consume the hornet from within, eventually bursting out. Mites. These microscopic freeloaders latch onto hornets, draining blood and spreading disease. Weakness spreads, and a once fierce hunter becomes sluggish, vulnerable, easy prey. Parasites are the ultimate insult. Death not by epic battle, but by being hollowed out from the inside. The myth of invincibility. To humans, hornets look invincible, but their daily reality is anything but. They're hunted from above by birds, attacked from the ground by mammals, stalked by rival insects, humiliated by bees, and hollowed out by parasites. Being feared by one species, humans, doesn't mean safety. In fact, it makes things worse. Hornets live in a constant cycle of building, defending, and losing. They fight, they sting, they kill. But no matter what, something out there is ready to destroy them. Why this sucks? So why does it suck to be born as a giant hornet? Because even as one of the deadliest insects on Earth, you're never safe. Birds pluck you from the air. Mammals rip apart your nest. Rival insects ambush you. Bees boil you alive. Parasites eat you from within. And unlike humans, hornets don't have the luxury of understanding why. They don't know about ecosystems or balance. They don't know they're part of a food chain. All they know is that every day is survival, and survival rarely lasts long. Being born a hornet means living in constant contradiction. You are a predator feared by many, yet you're also prey to countless others. Your power doesn't guarantee survival. Your sting doesn't guarantee safety. The world is always ready to devour you. And even if you somehow dodge birds, mammals, insects, bees, and parasites, there's still one last enemy you can't escape: time. Because hornets don't just suffer through danger, they suffer through the cruel ticking clock of their own biology. 9. The curse of short-lived life for a giant hornet is cruelly brief. For all the ferocity, all the stings, all the effort spent hunting, building, and defending, the clock is always ticking. The world doesn't wait. Hunger doesn't wait. The queen doesn't wait. In time, the silent predator guarantees that the life of every hornet will end far sooner than it should. Being born a giant hornet isn't just dangerous, it's short. Weeks, not years. Unlike humans, some birds or mammals, hornets live in a fraction of the time. A worker hornet emerges from its cell and typically lives only a few weeks. It spends every second foraging, feeding larvae, patrolling the nest, and fighting invaders. Soldiers may die even faster, thrown into battles to protect the colony. Drones, the males, live a bit longer, but only until mating season, after which they die instantly. Even queens, the longest-lived members of the colony, rarely survive more than a year, and their entire existence revolves around laying eggs, not freedom or exploration. The lifespan of a hornet is a countdown. It's a biological clock with a very cruel alarm bell. Exhaustion as constant companion time isn't the only thief. Life itself is exhausting. From the moment a worker emerges, she flies for hours hunting insects. She chews wood pulp to expand the nest. She feeds the larvae relentlessly. She defends the colony from predators and rivals. There are no breaks, no rest days. Even sleep is fleeting. Most of the time, hornets enter short periods of inactivity to conserve energy, but it's never real rest. Every moment is labor, and the body wears down fast. By the end of a few weeks, workers are burnt out, wings tattered, stingers worn, and bodies exhausted. Death isn't dramatic. It's a slow, creeping consequence of ceaseless labor. The brutality of time against soldiers. Soldiers face the harshest timetable. They are born to die, trained to die, and biologically engineered for a short, brutal life. Their very purpose guarantees that time will claim them quickly. When a nest is attacked, soldiers rush to the front lines. They fight relentlessly, stinging enemies, blocking intruders, and sacrificing themselves if necessary. Many die within hours during a single encounter. The rest continue their cycle until exhaustion or injury claims them. In the world of hornets, being born strong doesn't mean living long. It only means that when your time comes, your fall is spectacularly painful. Drones, one chance, then death. Male hornets or drones experience time differently, but the end is just as grim. Their entire life is a build-up to a single fleeting opportunity: mating. A drone flies through forests and fields, waiting for the emergence of new queens. He doesn't hunt, he doesn't forage, he doesn't defend. His existence is a single, consuming obsession. When mating finally occurs, it is literally the last act of his life. His body collapses immediately afterward, leaving him a casualty of biology. Time for drones is merciless. Every day is a countdown to one inevitable event, followed by death. Queens. The illusion of longevity. Even queens, the supposed rulers of the colony, are not immune to time's cruelty. Their lives stretch longer, sometimes up to a year, but they are chained to a single purpose: reproduction. Every egg she lays is another tick of the clock. Every day spent in the nest feeding larvae is a day closer to her eventual death. Even the strongest queens die, usually when winter arrives or the colony collapses. For them, longevity is an illusion. A year is nothing compared to the universe. And even in that year, life is dominated by servitude, labor, and the looming shadow of death. The relentless march of generations' time doesn't just take individual hornets. It erases entire generations. The nests they build, the larvae they raise, the battles they fight, all are temporary. Winter kills nearly every hornet in the colony. Workers perish, soldiers perish, drones perish, the old queen perishes. Only a few new queens survive, carrying on the cycle. Every individual life is swept away like sand in the wind. All the effort, all the pain, all the suffering, gone in a season. For a hornet, death is guaranteed and life is fleeting. No matter how much you survive, the clock always wins. Biological clock is a curse. Imagine being born with an internal countdown, a timer you cannot stop, slow down, or escape. That's the curse of the giant hornet. Every wing beat brings you closer to death. Every flight, every sting, every hour of labor shortens your remaining time. Hunger, predators, and disease accelerate the process. No matter how strong, no matter how fast, no matter how clever, you cannot cheat biology. Life is not long enough to enjoy. Life is not long enough to be safe. Life is only long enough to serve the colony, feed the queen, and maybe sting a few enemies along the way. The psychological weight. Even if hornets are too small to ponder mortality like humans, evolution has given them instincts that echo the cruelty of time. They instinctively know that danger is constant. They know that predators exist everywhere. They know that they must forage endlessly to keep the colony alive. Every instinct, every behavior, every moment is shaped by the fact that death is always near. Their brains may be tiny, but their lives are dominated by survival calculations that make time feel even shorter. For a creature built to live a few weeks, every second counts, and every second brings you closer to oblivion. Being born as a giant hornet means living life against a clock you cannot see but can feel. Workers live only weeks before exhaustion claims them. Soldiers are engineered to die in combat. Drones exist for a single act before instant death. Queens rule for a season, but even they are chained to the relentless march of time. And every colony, every effort, every sacrifice is wiped away with the coming of winter. No creature experiences life more intensely, more painfully, or more fleetingly. A giant hornet's existence is a constant battle with a ticking clock, a race that can never be won. And after this, if you thought things couldn't get worse, we still have one last truth to face: the existential horror of being hated and feared by nearly every other species, including humans.
These
10.
giant hornets
Hated
are
by
hated
all.
by all. A
Imagine
monster
living
to
your
humans
entire life
and an
under
ancient
siege.
rival to bees.
Every action, every choice, every wing beat is scrutinized by a hostile world. For giant hornets, this isn't imagination, it's reality. Despite their size, strength, and lethal sting, hornets are universally hated. From humans to bees, birds, mammals, and even fellow insects, almost every creature sees them as a threat, a nuisance, or a target. And this hatred defines their existence. Humans, the ultimate enemy. To humans, hornets are monsters. Headlines call them murder hornets. Documentaries portray them as deadly killers, and viral videos make them seem unstoppable. Even the truth, That hornets rarely attack humans unless provoked doesn't matter. Fear spreads faster than facts. People destroy nests, spray insecticides, and track hornets like criminals. Every time a hornet crosses into human territory, it becomes a target for eradication. No matter how cautious, how intelligent, or how fast they fly, hornets live in constant danger of being hunted. Their very presence sparks fear, hatred, and violence. Bees, ancient rivals. Giant hornets are notorious for decimating honeybee colonies. To the bees, hornets are the ultimate enemy, predators that target their brood with terrifying efficiency. Bees respond with swarming attacks, heat balls, and chemical defenses. They risk their lives to kill a single hornet. While hornets are larger, stronger, and equipped with venom, bees fight strategically. A hornet that thought it was the predator can quickly become the prey. In the eyes of bees, hornets are hated because they are deadly, and hornets live knowing that hatred is justified. Birds' natural nemesis. As we've seen, hornets are prey for many birds. Birds don't just hunt hornets, some specialize in them. Bee-eaters hunt hornets mid-air. Shrikes impale them on thorns. Crows and magpies may snatch them from flowers or fallen trees. Hunted relentlessly, hornets experience life as both predator and prey. Their sting may kill many insects, but it doesn't save them from feathered hunters. Birds' hatred isn't emotional, it's survival. But to the hornet, it feels like constant persecution. Mammals. Opportunistic haters. Bears, raccoons, skunks, and humans raid nests for food. They destroy colonies, eat larvae, and scatter survivors. For hornets, mammals are a walking nightmare. Massive, unpredictable, and deadly. Even when hornets fight back, humans and mammals almost always win. The hornet may sting, bite, or swarm, but size, strength, and numbers aren't enough. Hated and hunted from above and below, hornets have few safe spaces left. Fellow insects, competitors, and killers. Other insects don't just ignore hornets, they fight them. Praying mantises, assassin bugs, and even rival hornet colonies attack without hesitation. Cannibalism can occur under stress or food scarcity. Hornets live surrounded by enemies. Even their own kind can betray them. Survival is a daily struggle, and every interaction carries the potential for death. The social and emotional toll. Hated by all doesn't just mean physical danger. It means that hornets exist in a world where every interaction is a threat. No friendships exist. No allies exist outside the colony. Every creature is either prey or predator. Every encounter could be fatal. There is no respite, no peace, no neutrality. The world itself seems to oppose them. The irony of fear. Humans fear hornets for their sting, their size, and their raids, yet hornets themselves live in terror of birds, mammals, rival hornets, and bees. Every day is a war, every flight a gamble, every hunt a potential trap. Hornets are both feared and hounded, predators and prey, hated and hunted. Their existence is a paradox of power and vulnerability. The existential reality. Being born a giant hornet means living a life where hatred defines reality. Fear is everywhere. Danger is constant. Freedom doesn't exist. Happiness is impossible. Death is guaranteed. All the adaptations, strength, and cunning in the world cannot shield them from universal opposition. Every aspect of their life is defined by conflict, risk, and hostility. Even the most fearless hornet can do nothing about it. The world is aligned against them. It's why it sucks to be a giant hornet. After 10 chapters of misery, it's clear why being a giant hornet is one of the harshest existences on Earth. 1. Born into slavery. Your entire life is dictated by the queen in the colony. You have no autonomy. 2. Endless hunger. You hunt constantly, never eat the prey you kill, and survive on regurgitated larvae spit. 3. Loneliness. Even in a crowded nest, you are isolated, disconnected, and disposable. 4. Dangerous adaptations. Every change to survive, Urbanization, hunting skill, global travel creates new threats. 5. Relentless predation. Birds, mammals, insects, parasites, and bees all threaten your life. 6. Short lives. Workers and soldiers die within weeks. Drones exist only to mate once and perish. Queens live only a season. 7. Hated by all. Every species sees you as a threat, a snack, or a nuisance. The world conspires against your existence. In every way imaginable, giant hornets endure a life filled with pain, risk, and futility. The final thought. If you ever see a giant hornet buzzing through the trees, don't just think dangerous insect. Think of the life it lives. A life enslaved, hunted, lonely, hungry, and fleeting. A life defined by universal hatred, where every day is survival, and every survival is temporary. Being born a giant hornet isn't just challenging. It's an existential nightmare in miniature. Nature's apex predator, feared and reviled, trapped in a cycle of misery from birth to death. And that, in the brutal truth of the natural world, is why it utterly, painfully sucks to be born as a giant hornet.